one of the things that we're really lacking when we talk about sex and technology is context. And if there's anything that I know about sex, it's that the context always matters. I mean, Mason sort of started with this, with this comment that situations and context matter. So what I want to start doing, eventually what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you just 3 kind of examples of the way people are using technology to be sexual. But I actually want to start with a little context. So I'm going to give you 3 sort of moments in sex tech history. So this is the first one. Doesn't seem very sexy yet, does it? Unless you like donkeys. So this is a thing of it's like a woodcut carving of a 12th century mill, right? So you see a millstone there. And so mills were the most widespread technological innovation in the 12th century. So everybody was freaking out. No one could believe that we had these mills were working. They had this ability to turn wind or water power into cost-effective energy for grinding flour and tanning leather, processing cloth, and a bunch of other tasks that had huge economic impact and also profound social impact. Because the mills, and so you see that the thing that looks like the donkey's going into is a mill house. So there was always a building. And the mills became a place where people of different classes and different genders mingled more freely than they ever had. The mill was a place where things happened. It felt like things were happening, where new and old was mixing, where people could freely comment on these innovations, this new stuff that's happening. And not surprisingly, mills were a place where sex happened. Right? Sex happened in talk, so people told and then shared dirty jokes, and there wasn't always you weren't getting that kind of again across classes and genders. This was new that people were in the same space sharing dirty jokes. It also happened in deeds. So the mills became a place where people would hook up. It was a space of medieval hookups and also sex work. So this was so threatening to the order that this guy named Saint Bernard de Clairvaux, who kind of ruled everything, I don't know enough about history to tell you anything more specific, but he was like the abbot that oversaw this. He threatened to have all the mills destroyed. And this quote from him is, he threatened to have them destroyed because they, quote, formed centers for human relations, contacts, meetings, and worse still, prostitution. So this would be tantamount to someone saying, I'm destroying the internet, right? Or someone saying, I'm destroying all cars and all knowledge that you have to build cars. This was not a small thing. This was a huge piece of technology. And the thing that was, and he was so, the sex part was so threatened that it was one of the things he mentioned. The mills were maybe one of the very earliest documentations we have of this intersection of sex and technology. So I always like to think about like what the first actual use of sex and technology would be, and of course we should think about what technology means, and there's lots of different definitions, but one of them is that it's a tool that we use. So to me, the first person that figured out how to make fire and then realized that they could make a fire and they didn't have to have sex in a cave, they could have it outside because now it was warmer outside. They couldn't be outside. That would have been sex and technology, and everybody would have been like freaked out about that. But no one wrote that stuff down. So we do know about this. This stuff is written down, and this may be one of the earliest examples of sex and technology colliding. So this is the second one. And this is a headline from a newspaper, and I've taken one word out. So something was being blamed for schoolgirl unwed mothers. And the thing that was being blamed was cars, and this comes from the front page of the Chicago Tribune in 1926. So this is a newspaper article in 1926. And the title was "Autos Blamed for Schoolgirl Unwed Mothers." And here's some of the stuff from the article. Automobiles with predatory drivers, which are just people driving cars, were blamed by a Salvation Army official. Again, Salvation Army, that's not the first time we've said that name. For an astounding number of young unmarried mothers. Colonel Margaret Bevel said that 42% of the unmarried mothers of 15 different Salvation Army maternity homes had been, quote, schoolgirls of high or elementary grades, averaging 16 years of age, and that the majority of the girls, this is a quote again, attributed their difficulties to automobile flirtation. So their difficulties were that they were pregnant, and automobile flirtation means having sex in a car. So wed cars and predatory drivers are drivers, in the same way that cyber stalkers are often people who are just online. Right? And then, of course, which is not to say that there aren't people who are stalking, but not all people who spend 10 hours a day on a computer are criminals or predatory. So cars, one of the things that happened, and you may already know this, one of the things that happened when cars slowly started becoming lower cost and more easily accessible, is that they created a space. So no one had, very few people had privacy in their homes unless you were really rich. And all of a sudden there's a space where you could go and be alone with someone and not be watched by your family and by your community, etc. And one of the first things people started doing was going out and having sex in their cars. And so this was an early article about how dangerous cars are. Cars are dangerous. Cars are not only are people having sex, but we're going to have all of these unwed, unmarried girls having kids. God forbid. So this was number 2. And this is the third. Now, does anyone know what the lights in the room? So I'm just wondering, this is a short video. It's a TV commercial. It did not air here. It aired in Canada. And I think that you'll see it better if we turn, see how this works. What about those silver? What about closer towards the door? Those silver ones.
The silver ones.
Those ones that look normal? Genius people. An absolute genius.
So this is a TV commercial, a very recent TV commercial.
Is that too dark now?
It's only for less than a minute. Okay, we can do the lights again. So this is Philips. It's a razor, a robot that they've chosen to make it look like a woman. Insert the razor in your wrist. I don't know if you got this, but it's a device that's about this big, and thick white cream comes from it. I'm not sure exactly what they're trying to say with this commercial, but actually I know exactly what they're trying to say with this commercial. Technology is very sexy. This is the future. In the future, water will come from the ground up, and we'll all have robots that shave us. And if you notice that there's a weird subtle thing, which is when they finally make eye contact, then they stop, which isn't interesting. That's not sort of part of what I want to talk about here, but I thought it's like, so this, it's like quite sexual or pornographic, I think. And so much so that, again, they never aired it here in the States, but then when the robot and the dude make eye contact, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, that can't happen. You can shave me, but you can't have human connection. Okay. Anyway, so this is the third sort of moment, and what I wanted to show you these 3 things because I think they're all actually very similar. So what all these images or these films share, the mill, the girls in cars, the sexy razor robot, is the way that technology represents something new and represents something that is happening, right? And often our anxiety about new things happening, very quickly, well, there's 2 things to notice. Number 1 is, when there's a new technology, one of the first things we humans seem to do with it is figure out how to have sex in it, or on it, or with it. It's just what we do. And there are dozens, not hundreds, but dozens of examples. I mean, it just happens again and again. The printing press, the film camera, the still camera. All of the first film was 2 people kissing. As soon as there was a printing press, people started publishing pornography. So we get involved with sex and technology, and we get anxious about the fact that something's happened, something new is happening, and we don't really understand it, right? Because we don't really get a chance to. This sort of exercise is not something they were probably doing in the 12th century at all. I mean, they didn't have Microsoft Word. Okay, so I wanted to kind of offer that as a context because, again, I think it's very easy for us to, and maybe not us in this room, but it's very easy, but maybe us in this room too, to get very anxious and also to believe that something brand new is happening here. The internet is changing everything, and it's not. Nothing new is really happening. One of the sort of constituencies that really wants us to understand this as a revolutionary change are the companies that are making this technology, all of which, with very few exceptions, are for-profit companies, and it's good for them to have us believe that they're changing the world, because then we like Google because they're changing the world for the better, as opposed to they're doing what's always happened, and it's in new, interesting ways, but it's actually not, in a big picture way, kind of what's new. I want to give you one other kind of historical, one more piece of historical context, which is a very short history of computing. So this slide, I made the slide, but it comes from this guy named Mark Weiser. This is not something I know that much about, so I'm really kind of just regurgitating what I've learned. So people who people who work in technology and computing talk about there being 3 waves. And the first wave, which was before probably any of us were around, maybe, was what they call mainframe computing, which is, you've seen pictures of, like, it's a big building and it's just one computer, and there's lots of people in lab coats and they're all milling around the computer and they're putting cards in, they're pulling them out. And this was the first kind of wave of computing, was giant computers, one computer with many, many users. The second wave, which is the one that I sort of was not really born into, but that happened in the 80s and even the 90s, is what they call the personal PC, which is then all of a sudden, all of us had our own computer, which before that happened, it was inconceivable. I remember thinking, like, well, not everyone's going to have a computer, and then getting one, and getting a modem, and then, like, finding one person who I could talk to, because no one else had a computer and a modem. But eventually we each got our own computer, and there was one of us and one computer. Now we're in the third wave, which they sometimes call ubiquitous computing, which sort of means computing everywhere, or sometimes they call it calm computing, which is one user and many computers. So most of us have a smartphone, most of us have a camera, most of us have one or two. We have a tablet, we have a laptop, we have many computers, and this will keep going. We're going to have glasses that have technology in them. We're going to have clothes that have technology embedded in them. And so where we're moving, and where we are now, but we're slowly moving more towards it, is this idea that technology will be behind the scenes. Technology will be everywhere, and we'll be completely unaware of it. The goal of all of these companies is to build technology that you don't know is there, because that's the technology that we'll all use more of and then pay more for. The fact that computers are still kind of hard to use, the fact that my mom can't figure out how to watch things she wants to watch, she's still she can really only deal with cable. There's lots of companies that are trying to get. They want my mom. My mom has way more money than I do. They want my mom as their customer. So the idea is that it's ubiquitous. It's all behind the scenes. It's also called calm computing because it's supposed to not freak us out. We're supposed to not even think about it. And this context is important because that's what they're moving towards. And when that happens, we will become less and less aware of the influence that any of this technology has on our choices, on our expression, on all of this. Okay, so I want to give you one definition. This is a term I use. It hasn't caught on. I want people to catch on, but it's too long, but I still try. So when I talk about sex and technology, I often refer to this term human-computer sexual interactions. And I didn't make the term up, I should say. And basically it describes, it is descriptive in that this is a way of thinking about all the different ways that humans and computers, or more largely technology, interact. So how we interact with technology, how we interact with each other through technology. And that's what the term refers to. So it refers to kind of any of the ways that we interact with computers or technology and with each other through technology in a context that's considered sexual by any of the people involved. So it doesn't have to be considered sexual by everyone. But if one person considers it sexual, it's sexual. And because sexual, we should remember, sexual doesn't just describe physical acts, but also thoughts, emotions, desires, and fantasies. HCSI, or human-computer sexual interaction, can be thought of as both the activities or actions, the things we do, but also the experience of this. And so this has already came up a lot in the sort of values clarification exercise, which is that sex isn't just about the things we do. When we think about cybersex, that's what we usually think of. We think of online dating, or looking at porn, or sex toys. But it's also about how it feels. How does it feel? Does it feel different to look at, for example, a sexually explicit image on a computer screen than it did to look at it on a TV screen, than it did to look at it when I had to go into a theater, right? And the answer is yes, it does. There's not a generalizable way it feels different, but those differences matter, right? What it used to mean to have to get up, go to a neighborhood, walk into a movie theater, you're in a dark room, you know a bunch of people are already masturbating, you sit down and you watch your porn film. That was a very different experience than being on the subway and picking up your tablet or your phone and looking at something, right, that no one else can see. But you're there, you're still there with other people. What I like about this, and so this slide has these images and then it has all these different words, and all these words are examples, right? So we use instant messaging and text messaging for sex, right? And we use our cell phones and video phone cameras for sexual things. And we blog about sex, and we watch porn. And cyber prostitution, which is a virtual sex work, where people pay real money to interact sexually with virtual avatars. And we use email and teledildonics, and I'm going to show you some of these, but I want to make the point that this slide is probably already out of date. There's probably already 3 or 4 more new things, and every 2 years there's going to be 12 new things. Because part of this depends on the platforms that companies create. So when there's a new platform, a new way of us communicating, will be sexual, and it'll be a little bit different. What I find useful about this definition, though, is that it counters the kind of compartmentalization that I see we do mostly right now with sex and technology. So people might think about internet dating. That's one thing. Well, everyone does that. And then there's like looking at porn online, and then there's going to chat rooms and pretending you're someone else and having sex. And we tend to think of all these things as very different. And I don't think that's actually helpful as professionals. I mean, it's not helpful for ourselves either, but if you're working with people, I think it's better for us to be thinking about the big picture and to be able to talk about all these different things and how they connect. So that's one of the things I like about this. The other thing that I think is useful to take this big picture is that as technology kind of proceeds into the background, we do want to be thinking about the influence it's going to have, and particularly the influence it's going to have on our opportunities for sexual expression, because absolutely it will. And I'll give you some very concrete examples now, actually. Okay, so let me just, one warning, which is that there is some nudity. I think it's all virtual nudity, so there's no actual nude bodies, but there's naked virtual people. A little bit of coarse language, which is not my own, but so that's in there, but it's not too bad, I don't think. There you have it. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm actually just going to show you. I'm going to look at 3 examples of how people use technology for sex. And so the first is sexual entertainment. That's a broad kind of thing that we go online. We use technology for sexual entertainment. We're going to talk about one specific example, which is this thing called interactive pornography. How many people have heard of interactive pornography? A couple? Okay, ooh, lots of people. Okay. So yes, I'm just going to type this. So this is a website. I think the way it works is you pay like about $15. I've never actually paid for it, but I haven't stolen pictures. There's pictures that are available for free, so I can share what it's like. So you pay $15, and it's called Virtual Femme, and these are the things on the homepage it claims it offers. Artificial intelligence, which it doesn't offer. Full motion video, it does have that, yes. Speech synthesis, which means that it can understand my speech. I can talk rather than just type. Voice recognition, which is, I think, the same thing. I'm sure there might be a tech reason for both of those being there, but probably not. And then finally, the most important part of technology, beautiful girls. And so what the Virtual Femme does is it's trying to make pornography more interactive. And it's based on a kind of software called a bot. And so a bot is just a piece of software that is designed to mimic human interaction, usually either text or voice. So when you call American Airlines and you hear like swoosh and you hear, "Hi, my name is Emily and I can help you. Just speak to me in a normal voice," or whatever it says, that's a bot. So it's a piece of software that knows a lot about, it's just been programmed with all the rules of human grammar. It's been programmed with different accents, so it knows how to hear the different ways we talk. And it's been programmed to decipher, or to not really understand. Actually, they're more rudimentary. So it basically has so many options that it knows that if I say like departure time because I'm angry or I'm in a hurry, it knows that's the same as like I would like to know my departure time. So that's what a bot is. When you go to like online to Betty Crocker, actually, when you go online to Betty Crocker, and you have an opportunity to chat with someone, you're chatting with a bot. You're chatting with a robot. It's not a real person. In Canada, IKEA and Bell, which is our big phone provider, they have them. So the idea is that it makes you feel like you are interacting with a real person. So the Virtual Femme sort of uses this technology, though not really. The way that it works is that the pornographers have filmed different women, and you go onto the website, you can choose your woman. It's all women. I think it's almost all white women, and it's all straight. And so you can choose Emily, and then you go into a room, and this is one of the first things you'll see. So you'll see Emily sitting in a room, not very well set designed. And what you see down on the bottom, I don't know if you can read it, but okay, I'm going to come over here. So on the bottom, you're seeing this sort of text, this chat window thing. And so there's Emily, and Emily says, "Hello," and then I'm Joe, I guess, and I go, "Hey." And Emily says, and again, so Emily would be programmed to respond to that. "Oh, wow, I can't believe you're here, Joe. Do you want to see my," and then there's a word, and it rhymes with hunt. But I do this work in lots of different settings, so it's not always an appropriate word to have there. So Emily's going right for it. Emily's not really into romance. She's just offering Joe to see that. Joe, though, says, "Take off your coat." So when Joe says that actually triggers a video that they have of her taking off her coat. So first I see Emily like that. If I say "take off your coat," then I see a video of Emily standing up and taking off her coat. Then Emily just stands there. And of course Emily says, "Sure, I'll take off my coat for you!" Exclamation point, because Emily's there. She's very happy to do that. Joe says sit, and Emily says sitting, and then Emily sits, and we see a video of Emily sitting down. And so Joe can do this either by typing or he can talk. And not surprisingly, soon after this, they do things other than standing up and sitting and taking coats off. So you could ask Emily to do one thing or another to Joe. And the way it's all filmed is sort of what they call point of view. So I never see a man's face. I see a sort of body. I'll see like this part, and I see the penis, and that's all I see. That's the basic idea of it, right? The only thing you ever see is whatever these pornographers have decided to film. This is what they call the brain editor. So what you can do with this is that you can see all of the things that they filmed Emily doing, and you can program her to do what you want her to, whatever it is, based on what you want to say, right? So if you don't want to say, "Give me a blowjob" or something, you might want to, you want to say, "Turn off the lights." So you can program it so that when you say "turn off the lights," you see the film of the oral sex scene or whatever it is. So you can probably imagine at this point all sorts of problematic ways that people are using this technology, right? And again, this is very much mainstream pornography, so it is the least creative, understanding of human sexuality. It is deeply embedded with sexism and racism and misogyny and all of the stuff that we come to expect from mainstream pornography. But I want to actually give an example of how this might be used in a more interesting way. Go back to that one. Which is, so usually we see the stuff and we think like, this is terrible, right? Because of course, like, guys are going on there and just being really violent, and maybe that's going to make them more violent in real life, or maybe it isn't. You have an opinion about that. There's no good science on this, but it's bad. But there may be some other options. So an example I could, if I was someone I had a fetish, and I had a fetish I was very embarrassed about. So I have a fetish for water bottles, let's say. I don't have a fetish for water bottles. Because if I did, then this would be weird and actually non-consensual. But that would be interesting, right? That would be an interesting character, someone who does that. But no, I don't have a fetish for water bottles. But let's say I did. I'm very embarrassed about my fetish for water bottles. I have a partner, but I've never told them about my fetish for water bottles. I think that if they knew about this, they would either find me ridiculous or grotesque. And one of my fantasies is just to say water bottle and just be totally ravished. And that's all I ever fantasize about. And in fact, it's something that I think about when I'm having sex with my partner, and it makes me check out, because that's all I can think about. So with this piece of technology, I could actually program Emily such that I say water bottle, and I get to see myself be ravished by Emily when I say water bottle, water bottle, water. And maybe that's great, and maybe I love it, and maybe I'm like, oh my God, that is who I am. And I go and I talk to my partner, and maybe they think this is fine, and everything gets better. Maybe I realize, well, that did nothing for me. I always thought it would, but it didn't, and it's over. So, there are possibilities where this could be, there are potentially positive uses of this kind of technology, although a lot of it depends on how we use it and who makes it. The question I want to get you just to think about is, does it seem new? Is this something new, right? Certainly this is slightly more immersive. So their idea is that they're making something that's pretty passive. Well, it's a debate if pornography is a passive medium, but mostly people are sitting and watching and touching themselves, but there isn't a lot of interaction. So there's more interaction, but it's still, I would argue, pretty passive. And again, it's limited by the imagination of the pornographers, whose imaginations are not ones that I put a lot of value on. For the most part, there's some very interesting, smart, thoughtful pornographers, but for the most part, they're in it for the money and they don't think very much about sex. Any questions about this example? I'm gonna move on to the next one, but. If anyone has a question or anything they want to say about water bottles.
So these are software programs that you purchase?
They're web-based. No, they're not software.
They're web-based.
Yeah, so you pay like a 15-month fee.
Okay.
Right. Sorry. Just turn this on. Okay. Okay, so I want to give a next example. So this next example is about touch. So we use technology for touch. And the example I'm going to talk about is teledildonics. How many people have heard that term? Okay, so teledildonics basically refers to the control of sex toys, the use of sex toys over the internet, or the remote use of sex toys. So this first picture is just an example of a very old product. So on the right side, you see the vibrator. It's called the Rabbit Pearl, or Rabbit Habit. And it looks like a sex toy, like the kind of sex toys that you buy in regular sex stores. But you buy it from this particular company called Simulator that doesn't exist anymore. So you buy it, let's say one person buys it, they give it to their partner, and their partner goes home, and then they go on their computer. So let's say their partner's in Toronto, and they're in Portland, or they're in Seaside. They go onto their computer in Seaside, and you can see in the middle there's a little person at a computer with a lightning bolt. And they control the speed. The way these vibrators work, if you're not familiar with them, I don't know if I can jump. So, I don't know if everyone can see this. Okay, so in the middle there's these beads, and the beads whir around. They turn around, and the little rabbit vibrates. So it's designed specifically for vaginal insertion, and the rabbit is providing clitoral stimulation. So that's how the sex toy works. And so I could be on a computer in Seaside, and my partner could be in Toronto, and I can control the speed of the vibrator. Right? That's the basic idea of teledildonics. I want to show you some newer examples. So these two, there's actually 3 or 4 companies that are doing this now. These two are newer examples. There's 2 different products. And the way they're designing these toys now is that they're each basically, there's like one toy is a stick and one toy is a hole, right? And so the stick, which looks sort of like a vibrator, has both motors so that it vibrates. It also has sensors, so it senses pressure. So one person has that, so let's call this the stick. And someone else has the hole, and in the hole, it's a soft rubber, and inside there are motors. Sometimes there's motors that move back and forth, sometimes they just vibrate. And then there's also I guess it's sort of a motor that creates tension. It makes it squeeze tight or loose. And so the way this works is that each of you has a product. And of course, I mean, you may already be thinking about whether or not this is a heterosexual couple that's using this. These are it's a very heteronormative, embodied understanding of what sex is going to be, which doesn't mean that that's the people who are using it, but they're really thinking about penises and vaginas is all they're really thinking about. So the way it works is that I have the stick, let's say I have the vibrator, and I'm in Seaside, and then my partner has the hole over here, and they're in Toronto. And when I squeeze this, the tube squeezes tight where I squeezed it, right? So the sensor's all the way up and down. So if I squeeze it here, it gets tight in the middle. If I squeeze the top, if I move up and down, the vibrators move up and down. So what you're feeling inside the hole is what I'm doing on the outside of the stick, the vibrator. I'm sure they have better words for hole and stick, but that's I'm not in the business of selling these people's technology. Similarly, if my partner has the hole and is putting, let's say, their penis in the hole, the vibrator will respond in time to the way that they're penetrating the hole, right? So if they're doing this is very sexy, isn't it? This is what sex is. Just 4 times. And then I would feel here, and like, right, like that. So I'm making fun of this, but actually, and it works with Bluetooth. So you need smartphones. It uses Bluetooth technology. What's amazing about this, though, is that in fact, in many ways, my partner is feeling my touch. They're feeling it where, when, with the intensity that I intend. And these interfaces also are very interested in having video as well. So you can go to a site, but you can also just be on Skype or be on whatever, so you can actually see your partner. Let me see if I have another one. Oh, I do have this. I thought I got rid of this. Yes, this is... No, I don't have this. There we go. This is again.
The means of staying together, even when they're away from each other.
This is very short, so we'll just keep the lights on.
You could have various kinds of haptics. That is, you could not have a person in the same room with you, but by wearing a bodysuit that simulates various kinds of hugs, caresses, touches, insertions, and all of that can be controlled interactively through the internet.
If we get to the point where everybody has various devices so that you can have sex with your partner while the partner's in Japan and you're in Toronto, all the merrier. Now we got a whole lot of new toys, and it makes it very exciting.
So this is this imagination of what this is going to be like, which is not unlike what I imagine it might be like. And it's worth thinking about what we're seeing, right? So we're seeing mannequins, we're seeing something that looks exactly like the kind of heteronormative sex that we usually see in TV shows and movies. There's a rose, like long distance sex for me is I have to put the rose down. We're wearing wetsuits. And part of the problem, the reason this is funny, is that the people who are making this technology don't actually know very much about sexuality. I don't know how much they know about human experience. They are either engineers in some cases or they're pornographers in other cases. And engineers are very good at some things, but they're not actually, engineers don't spend a lot of time thinking about human experience. What they mostly spend time thinking about is cool technology, right? So they're interested in like, it's not nefarious. They're interested in like, well, how can we, how can we make this better, faster, smaller, stronger? And these words are worth thinking about and what those words mean when we're in the context of sexuality. And is that, if you want to talk about better sex, is faster, stronger, smaller, powerful, whatever, is that better? Is that what we want? So one of the things that this teledildonics is trying to address is the fact that most cyber sex that we have, the only touch that includes is that we're touching ourselves. So no matter how, I'm going to show you some examples of virtual spaces where people have very elaborate avatars, no matter how much is going on in the text and visually, in touch right now, for the most part, if I'm being sexual online, I am still touching myself. So teledildonics is meant to kind of address that. It brings touch into the virtual world. And so what's new about it? Is it a new form of touch? It's touch across distance. So, I mean, I'm intrigued by it. I'm not really sure. And the thing is, you could say, well, it's new because we couldn't have done that before, but does it feel different? Does that touch? And one of the new markets, one of the things that's sort of driving this is like couples that are living long distance because of the economy, right? So everybody's screwed, so no one has a good job. And so the answer is going to be they're going to come up with technology that we'll pay for. But the truth is that there's more and more people that are living at a distance. And so that's who they're targeting with this kind of technology. And for all I know, a hand job via one of these devices with my spouse of 20 years is going to feel exactly like it would if they were in there. Maybe it'll be better. I don't know. I mean, certainly, well, get really personal. I won't. Obviously, when you're tired, then you just start self-disclosing. Okay. So, but the question is it new, right? And then the other thing I want to kind of just note as we move on is think about the ways that the hardware and software that are created will influence our sexual options, right? So this idea that there would be mannequins stand-in for my partner, well, I won't ever have a partner that looks like that because nobody looks like that anyway, right? And I don't want a partner that looks like that. I mean, if I was really into mannequins, then it would be happy days for me. But if the point is about actually connecting this to our partners. Okay. Okay, so third example I want to give. I want to just do a time check. Okay, 2:30. What time is it? So 2:30. When does this end? 2:45. 2:45. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go through this one really quickly. But this is this issue around the ways that people explore identity and orientation online. So to understand this, the way that people are using it, you need to know something about avatars. I'm just going to skip that. So probably everyone knows that an avatar is a virtual representation that you can create, and it looks different in different spaces. If you're doing it on Yahoo, then you get to choose a hat that your avatar has, and if you're doing it in a space like Second Life, which used to be very popular and less so now, you can make an avatar that looks like anything. So these are three real people that exist in the world, and they're public, and so they're okay with me using their pictures. And each of them made an avatar. So each of these avatars represent a real person. I'm going to say a few things about avatars, and as I do, I'm going to flip through a few photos. And this is from a photo book called Alter Ego. And Chris Boot, a photographer, he went around the world, and he took pictures of people's avatars and them. So what you're seeing is someone's avatar of themselves. So avatars are central to our experience in virtual spaces. They are a virtual representation of yourself. And making an avatar is a projection. You are projecting onto yourself. It's identity formation. And here's just two quotes that I want to share. So one is there's so much projection that happens when you're accessing the world through an avatar that you've personalized to be your ideal, that it's very easy to fall through the monitor even with the crappiest of interfaces. So this is Kyle Mashulis, he's a robotics engineer, and he's talking about how when you spend a lot of time making an avatar, your experiences in these virtual spaces is very deep, it's very emotional, it's very different. And then the other quote is from a journalist named Ian Dibble, who wrote the first book about sort of avatars in virtual spaces. And he just says, avatars are not just an escape. Avatars are a partner, they're a tool, they're a fantasy, they're a business suit, and they're always a form of play. And what I want to say, and we don't have a lot of time to get into this, but I just want to make sure that you know that an avatar is not like a plastic piece that you put on a game board that stands in for you. Right? Avatars are really us. And it's hard to understand, and I encourage everyone, if you've never done it, you have to have many hours to do it, so it might not be worth it, but it's a very unique experience. But certainly the first time I ever did it, I mean, right away, I had to decide on what name I wanted, and you have a list of names, and it was interesting, because my last name is Silverberg, so it reads, I mean, it is Jewish, and it reads very Jewish, and I was like, oh, well, so do I want to pick a Jewish-sounding name? And then, well, if I want to pick a Jewish-sounding name, do I want to pick a name that's Eastern European, because that's where my family's from, and I had to make all these decisions, and they're interesting. So that's what avatars are. People use avatars in spaces that are meant for sex, and they also use avatars in spaces that are not meant for sex. That earlier slide, which was a definition of a term called emergent sex, and it's a term that someone coined to describe what happens when someone makes a website, a virtual space, where sex isn't supposed to happen, but people have sex in it anyway. And so what she's saying is it's very interesting to see when people are having sex against the rules, what that looks like. So I'm just going to share, this is some of the things that cybersex looks like, or virtual sex with avatars looks like. So sometimes it looks very familiar. This looks like something probably you're familiar with what you're seeing. Sometimes it looks vaguely familiar, but not exactly. So again, these are two different people, and one person is not totally human, and one person I think has cat ears, hard to tell. But this kind of sex, it looks like maybe some BDSM club. These are two people having sex, and one of them is some sort of deity with round balls that float above them, and one of them looks like sort of woman. This is an interesting one. So this is someone who, it is again a sort of BDSM scene. So this person is engaging in pony play, which I don't have time to get into, but it's a sort of sub-fetish. What's interesting about this is that in virtual spaces, this person could have just been a pony. They don't need to be a human wearing pony gear. So what this avatar that looks human is wearing is the kind of gear that you can go into a leather store and buy. So it's like these basically giant gloves that make you have hooves. It's very interesting to think about, well, why would someone, so this idea, well, if they want to be a pony, well, maybe they don't want to be a pony, they want to be a human being a pony. And so when people are engaging in sex in these virtual spaces, they will be seeing their avatars doing things, but often they'll also, more importantly, there's a text stream, right? So mostly the way that people are engaging is through text on a screen. Some people use their voices, although often people say they don't like that because it takes away from fantasy or from whatever, like what's going on, that it sort of ties them in a way that they don't like. So, what's this? Right. So again, question, is it new? Right? Is there anything different? Is it different? Is this different than having sex with someone real in real life and fantasizing about someone else? Is being someone else online or having sex with someone else online and both of you are being different, is that different than when you're really deep in a fantasy and engaged in a human sexual interaction? Is that other person that other person, or is that other person the fantasy that you have? And who are you? Right? And so is this different? What I would say, and this comes back to the blackjack point, is that what is new about this is that we can experience and try on other identities in a way that feels much more immersive and much more real because of the use of avatars, and in a way that's much safer than it used to be. So this is nothing's perfectly safe, but this is a safer way for me to go out there and try interacting with people and having people use feminine pronouns or having a feminine name. That's part of what I'm interested in exploring. Because in the world, I look like a guy, and so people interact with me that way. So there are new things about it. The thing that's not new about it, I will say, is that we're always still ourselves online. So one of the things you'll hear, a mantra you hear from tech companies, is that the technology is a great democratizer. It's great. Everyone's equal. So that's always bullshit. They're always lying about that. No, not everyone's equal, so not everyone first of all, we don't all have equal access to the technology, and also we're still ourselves. So when you go into Second Life, as I used to do, and when you go into these virtual spaces, people are still, narrow-minded and racist, or generous and lovely, or, whatever, trying to rip you off, or trying to give you something for free. We are still ourselves when we go into these spaces. We may be able to be different parts of ourselves, but we're still ourselves. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick time check. 2:34. So, I'm actually interested, and it's shifting gears quickly, but I would be interested. This is sort of this question, is virtual sex real sex, is often what all of these things come down to. The question, is cheating online the same as cheating in real life? Is this stuff valuable? Is it? And if we had more time, I'd actually get you into small groups and we would talk about it, but we don't. But I would be interested to hear if folks have thoughts about this question. Yeah?
I have a question.
Oh.
They'll never look at a mannequin the same
Department store, it's like a whole movie.
I hope that's a good thing. I hope you're taking something positive away.
And did they put the console in the cars to stop people from having sex in cars?
Oh, the middle of the seat.
Oh, the middle of the seat? That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. It's a good question.
I think
Yeah.
so.
A third point, more in line with this, are we going to see, because it's going to become so, we're not going to stop it, it's a moving train.
Right.
It's moving pretty quickly.
Right.
And it's going to be so entrenched in our culture. Are we going to see, I know it's happened in Second Life, but crime on the internet, and it's going to be like an outlet for people who experience sex crime on the internet.
Yes, of course, absolutely. There's a lot of sexual victimization going on online. There's way more going on in real life.
But can you
Offline.
prosecute it? Is it so?
Okay, so it's an interesting question. Yes, if you're interested, I'd be happy to give you some references. So there is a little bit about. So Julian Dibble wrote a book, and it was called, I think, My Tiny Life, and it was about the first case of rape online.
Yeah.
And it was in a virtual space. But again, each person is represented. This was all text-based. This was before the internet, before the web. And so each person had a line. Someone figured out how to prevent someone from getting offline. So there was a woman. This was actually in an academic setting, because the first virtual spaces were academic. And people were in this room, and they were just talking. It wasn't a sexual situation. And there was one person who was obviously aggressive and violent. And they were harassing this other person. And my understanding is that they kept bothering this person. And so the person was trying to have a conversation. So, you type a line, and your friends have other lines. This person kept getting in there, right? And basically not letting this person ever have a conversation with someone. And then somehow managed to lock the person in. Of course, the other person was in their home. They could have just stepped away from the computer. And the woman who experienced this she complained, and she called it being raped. And there was, and there are some, this has never come to court, but there are lawyers that are talking about this stuff. But of course there's laws about, what's happening is that we're just using laws we have. So there's laws about youth sharing pictures online. There are more, I know more about this in Canada, so I actually don't know a lot about the States, come to think of it. But unfortunately what's happening is the people that are thinking about these laws are really basing everything, they're not thinking about the stuff that all of you were talking about. Right? They're not thinking about our experience of technology. They're thinking about sex and victimization in the most sort of rudimentary, kind of legalistic ways. And so my impression of this is that no one feels super protected, right? Like laws that are sort of like criminalizing sexting, even though they may be in place to protect people. My experience of talking to real people is that people aren't feeling like any of this stuff is being protective yet. But they're on it. People are thinking, governments are thinking about the ways, because of course people are using Second Life for other kinds of crimes also. We're still ourselves online, right? So we're still violent and we're still coercive. Yeah.
I guess what's interesting for me, I guess I'm less interested in whether it's real or not, or whether it's good or bad or anything else. What I see moving forward for hopefully myself and my community in this genre is, are we putting our money kind of theoretically where our mouth is? So
in what way?
Well, so I support my local organic farmer.
Okay.
And I, drive my car less and ride my bike more, whatever. And when I think of this, I think, okay, avatar, not hurting anyone. I'm creating something virtually that I may meet someone else virtually and have a whatever I have. But then I think about, the first scenario that you showed about having the voice control of a female image, and I think, well, if my money is going to support that, is that something different in a business money consumer level, something that's, like you said, misogynistic, racist, homophobic, whatever it is. And so I guess the conversation I would be interested in continuing to have after this workshop is, how do we support whatever kind of online virtual technology sex that is more my value system?
Right, great. So one of my answers is, what you can do is, the thing is, you have to decide that you want to be online at all. And if you do want to be online, if you ever see anything, the answer with the porn thing is just don't give them $15 a month. Right. That's easy. They'll go out of business soon because they could care less, and it's just so. But But the thing to know is that a lot of these companies actually want to know more about sex. So they want to know what, for those of you that are sexuality professionals, they want to know what you know because they want people to use their technology. And they're beginning to catch on that they actually have to know something about people. That they can't just build the best technology. So I know a lot of people who do what I do, and one of the things I do is I talk a lot to tech companies, and I talk in between tech companies and sexuality professionals. And so if you ever, if you're ever anywhere, if you hear anything about this, and you are a professional, and you have an opinion or some information to share, you should offer it. You say, well, I know you think that people just want, I know that you think everyone's straight, or you think everyone wants to do this, but I actually know 6 things about sex that you would probably make whatever you're doing better. Email them. A lot of companies would be interested in this.
I mean, I'd love a label like, my fair trade coffee. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
This is fair
Like
trade
fair
sex
trade.
work
Sure.
going
Yeah.
toward something that's against my values on
Right.
behind the scenes
Right.
that
Right.
I might not even ever know.
I will also say that it's a big step, even if you're an educator, for you to even raise this with people you're talking to actually say so because for some people it is fake. For some people it's just entertainment. And it does feel like a plastic man or on the board. And they still go into the spaces and do things that can be hurtful to others or end up feeling hurt themselves. And so just to point out that, well, actually your personal values, and wherever you are, if you're in a shop or if you're online, you can enact those values and you can try to live those values. And that's a lesson that I don't hear, that we need to start putting more in when we're talking, we're not just saying sexting's bad. And this image is going to last forever, so don't do that, because when you're trying to get into grad school, they're going to see a picture of you getting drunk, right? I mean, we focus on a few aspects of technology and sex or socialization, and we don't focus on this. That's a really positive thing to think about. It's like, well, how can you continue that? Okay. Okay. So, no, we still have a few more minutes. Hi, yes, Mason.
What I was going to say about the whole what am I supporting when I look at this porn or something like that? Like, I think it's a lot of the times it's just the same as anything else you're doing. Like, if you sign up for an account on Yahoo, you can do more research and see what Yahoo is doing and where the funds that Yahoo is getting is going. You can do the exact same thing with porn sites, really, and you can look it up, and you can there are some really good porn sites out there that are all queer-oriented and actively trying to be less sexist is what I was trying to say. There are things out there that are really good, and it's you can go look, you can go see what they're doing, you can see what company wants it, where the money is coming from, it's just like any other company in a lot of ways. And again, sometimes it's really hard to find that information. Sometimes that information is just not available, and you can also make the choice to look for something, find the information is not available, and say, I don't know where my money is going. I don't want to continue with this because it's not available. So that's my.
That's great. We still have time for one more question, or yeah?
I think one thing that's I really appreciated that comment. And one thing that thinking about being sex educators and thinking about messaging and having conversations with young people. And we've all grown up in a world that was before a lot of this stuff in some ways, right? And so, but my question is the same messaging, the same basic underlying universal values, do they still apply? Or is it changing so much that there's new messages that we need to develop? Or am I still behind the times, always will be forever, that I will never even know what messages to give because whatever I think it is, or isn't anymore, And so in informing our work, for instance, issues about consent, that's, I think a lot of us think that universal value that all sexually consenting people, all that kind of thing. Well, how is it then if it's with non-human?
Right.
So what are the new messages? And how do we find them?
Right.
Yeah.
So I was trying to get you a slide that had my email address so people could have my email address, but I'll just say it at the end. So my answer is, I have a simple answer to the first part, which is no, they're not new. They're not new. The ways that, not messages. It was the values piece, right? So I don't know what we're talking about when we talk about sexual messages. So that's a bit too vague for me to be able to answer.
Okay.
But humans have experience of sexuality, and I promise you, there's nothing new in that realm.
Right.
There's nothing new. If we're talking about behavior, People figured that out millennia ago. Every weird kind of sex that's been had has been had. Now, is it new that my fetish is for Velcro as opposed to for like snaps? Because it's different technology. I would say from an experiential perspective, there's not a fundamental difference. Because really also the issue is that if you're a professional, what do you actually want to do? Your job is not to know every single experience. Your job is probably to help people think through their own experience. And that stuff doesn't change. Consent, joy, pleasure, pain, confusion, social rules. Like the reason that new technology often feels confusing for people who aren't using it is that it's true that every platform has different social rules. Right? So what you do on Snapchat is different than what you do on Facebook, which is a little different than what you did on oh my God.
MySpace.
MySpace. I got to make that say my face. And like, someone who's probably 44 says. So these spaces have different social rules, but we're still humans in those spaces. Right? So the rules, what we give out might be different, the way we talk might be different. And so I do, a lot of educators do feel out of their depth because, of course, the young people are trying to educate know more about the social rules there. But that's fine. Just let them teach you. Right? And of course, people want to talk about that because it's weird. And again, the rules are, the way these things develop also aren't any different. Right? They're still guided by systemic oppression. And so the way that rules are created in a space, the way that social rules are created in a court in ancient England, I'm very ignorant, let's pretend that made sense, the way that they develop aren't that different than the way they developed in a house and the way they develop on Facebook. Like the way that these rules are created, who makes the rules? Who decides what's real and what's not? Who decides what's cool and what's not? Well, that system is something that you already know a lot about because you're alive, right? So if you survived this long, then you have some sense of how, how they work and how there's a lot of injustice and how we try to be ourselves. So the basics aren't changing at all. But I do think that there's stuff, I think there's change in experience. I do think that, certainly for me, my experience, I certainly have experienced things online that have changed my offline sex life that I had never had before. It's tricky. Can I say that I never would have? I don't know. Right? It feels like the stuff I get to do online, I'm not sure how I could have ever done it offline. But maybe I could have, right? People are always using the analogy of like letter writing, right? It's just like letter writing was like this slow burn romantic thing people did, and it's not. And is it any different than text messaging? People often say fundamentally it isn't, right? So we're still communicating. Okay, so that's all the time we have. But so let me just say, because I don't have a slide, I'll just say out loud my email address. So you're welcome to contact me if you want resources or anything. If you want a copy of this thing, I'm happy to share it. So it's CORY S as in Sam, IL, B as in Victor, ERBERG. Silverberg. Cory at CorySilverberg.com. And thank you. And there are a few extras of these, so if people want them, the concept pay them.
Grab one piece of paper.
Can I just pack are you in a rush? Yeah. Okay, so I'll pack up and we'll walk out because I know someone's coming.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? They probably have it already.
Well, yeah, this thing is coming in, so let's just wait right at the door for him.
It's actually interesting. It's like, so I'm 43, so when I started online exploring stuff, I never thought like, I never thought like, recording my sexual self.
I've definitely wanted to know. I want to figure out how to, amazing.
Yeah.
Once I signed on to the web of the internet, I knew I gave up everything.
And
so many times.
So I guess it was from Ontario, but it didn't specify like it was like in Ontario, Oregon, which I thought was really weird. But there's also in Ontario, California, and the movie for the battle.
Yeah. Eavesdropping. Yeah, just kind of slowly start up there. Okay.
Did you see the question of content evaluation?
I did. I wonder. I know.
Just gonna wait. Just gonna wait. Yeah. Oh, really? Still going. Which one is in here next? Oh. Oh, we don't want to block the door. Sorry, excuse me. Sure, okay, well, we'll just wait. We'll stay out here.
You left your jar in there.
Oh my
and I set it on the table there because I can't find it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Tia! Hey, Tia!
You said it was just...
I think so.
How are you? It was hot in there, now it's cold out here.
Oh, it is?
Yes. Oh, that makes sense.
I'd like to be able to take out all that authorizing.
No, and
And I told a lot of parents, especially younger, to take girls right. But I mean,
To see that little girl in there, had a rubber ducky.
I really want to stay for that last I'm going to be in this room too. Yeah, got a chair
I'm here.
Everyone else caught him in there and was talking to him now. Everyone else is getting to their next one.
But it's raining. Good. Yeah, nice. Good. You're done. Yeah, we're good. Out here? Yeah. Sounds good. No, she's hanging out in the blow dry up in the sand on my bed in the light, and everybody brings it. All right.
Oh, yeah?
Hi. How you doing?
We're parked in the driveway over here.
Okay.
He's not gonna.
Wow. Yeah, I look like. Nice seeing
Lots of ideas for me. Oh my God, all this relationships are not a problem.
We can do that.
It started raining.
Should we just wait, or?
Yeah, you told me.
Yeah, exactly. It's super helpful, but actually, it's really fun. Makes you think even more, but at least I was super happy.
There's sexuality and spirituality. It was just good and kind of.
Freezing cold in here.
It is cool. Never cool off.
Dad just took Jessica over there. We're just talking his ear off in there.
Riverview and okay, I think I'll do that. All right.
I was saying,
Yeah.
walk home and it's raining.
I'm getting ice cream. No, we're done.
Do we know where the iPad is?
Oh,
Sorry, I'm like
oh wait,
obsessed with.
I sold it.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know. So I'll go. Have fun in the. I'm gonna see Good. It looks like
I know. So we're going to leave probably around 11:30.
Okay, yeah, Martin's gonna take a tea.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't know if I'll see you.
Are you going up here?
Alright, see you on Thursday.
All right.
Thanks for having me on the way home.
Cheers, same as well.
How'd your workshop go?
I felt like everybody I knew was doing a workshop. Yeah, a lot. Who do I go see? You're not mad at me, sorry. I made a conscious decision that I would do one in here because it was the only one where it wasn't somebody that I know, and I thought I could see everybody else at some point and ask the question.
If you really want to know,
Right.
you can show your response.
That's how I decided.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go down to this sidewalk. That way, when he comes out, he'll come that way. That way, when he comes out, he'll go that way and not like us two towards those other people. You know what I mean? Just come stand at the other side of the stairs and he'll see us and come towards us.
Where are you going right now?
I'm here for the speech.
Quick, catch him before we leave.
Okay. Do you want me to lift someone or just sign it?
Just sign it.
Great job, Nathan. Thank you.
Yeah, because you're going to have to share that book with me, too.
Thanks, well, keep in touch.
Thank you. Haley, hey, do you want to grab something to drink first?
My new niece.
Yeah. Let's go. I got it. Oh, he's up there by himself. Walk this way and look up. Dang, yeah, I really wanted to eat him. He winked at me just now, gave me a smirky smile. I think. Excuse me, ma'am. Yeah.
Baby then, baby.
I gotta go to the bathroom first.
Is that where you're from?
Get so much,